try to speak the common language. Practically, SDMX tried to try to align semantic definitions of metadata and reference data sources by identifying and defining core concepts and vocabularies, meaning basic notions that could be used or in a horizontal way, and to be used as a common denominator for a member state to speak the same language and exchange information in a unifying manner, as well also to raise awareness of the importance of data and metadata management. Next slide, please. So during the years since 2010, SDMX created a number of semantic assets and solutions. Those can be distinguished into two categories: the core vocabularies, which are basic notions and definition of basic entities such as core person, core business, core location, core public organization, and core criterion and evidence vocabulary. Those are some high-level notions, but those some notions were made more specific, addressing specific constraints. Those are named the application profiles, and among the application profiles that were created were core public service, and for our purpose, DCAT-AP, which is we will explain later, and its variation GeoDCAT-AP, StatDCAT-AP, and ADMS, that stands for Asset Description Metadata Schema. Next slide, please. So the objective of DCAT-AP, which stands for Data Catalogue Application Profile, is its creation is a model that can describe the metadata that better describe data set. The reason for having this gather this information is to be able to those data set to be easily searchable on generic data portals, and making this information better retrievable across a border and section. The DCAT-AP application profile contains a number of notions such as data set, data series, and service, in order to better capture the whole entity of a data set, and is based is practical application profile of W3C DCAT. Its difference from DCAT is that it expresses constraints and usages on DCAT-AP, DCAT properties and classes, and also introduces additional properties and usages of control vocabularies, make this more specific. The outcome of the DCAT-AP and the purpose is to make the metadata descriptions to be maximally harmonized across Europe, as well as to provide a reliable source of European data portal. We like to stress the fact that we are not introducing something that is new, but the DCAT-AP is also is already used in the European data portal that implements the the Open Data Directive, and has its different variations such as Break DCAT-AP, DCAT-AP, and Stat DCAT-AP. But our aim is to harvest data from distributed portals. And now I'll pass the floor to my colleague Bert.
Thank you, Pavlina, for this introduction. And so what we are going to do together with everyone around the table is to start working on a document and to express and to use how we're going to use and apply DCAT-AP in order to satisfy the metadata requirements of the high-value datasets regulation. So the goal is not that it is an extension in its full sense, in sense of that it's independent, but it's more like an horizontal expression of use because high-value data sets are not bound to a particular domain, but they appear in all domains. So it's something that is across the catalogs that we already have. And so this is what we want to facilitate, what is the regulation wants to facilitate. And so that's what's the way what we want to use DCAT-AP to see and to have this realized. What we will do is introduce step by step how we're going to do the governance. The first part now of this document of this part, and it will be part of DCAT-AP, and then give some introduction to the regulation, what elements are in there, and after then the break, we will go into the real issues that we have identified. So on the governance, this, as already mentioned, is a joint effort from DG Connect and DCAT to bring the communities together to form on high-value datasets an ecosystem of this aspect on the high-value datasets. So it becomes a part of it, of the DCAT-AP ecosystem. So CMEC will take care that the editorial efforts around it. It's a joint effort to take care that the policy aspects are implemented correctly and in force in the right way. So what we expect, and this is the objective, of course, of this document, is that we realize something that's already today existing, that the rules that will be stable for a long time. And so the goal is that we can build something up where we don't have like for instance, we have now revision ongoing on DCAT 3 in DCAT-AP, that this has not a major impact on it, on the rules that we want to use. As I already said, our community is a joint community, so we bring together people from different angles, from the PSI expert group and the DCAT-AP community. And as the DCAT-AP community already knows, we gather feedback from various ways, but mainly through GitHub and our regular webinars on DCAT-AP. So these are the main ways that we collect feedback, but of course there are other channels available, and you can contact the team as well if you want to have more questions or provide feedback. For those who don't know yet what DCAT-AP consists of as a data specification, it has a human readable text, that is where everything is explained, and then we provide as well support for the implementers, for instance, by adding JSON-LD context or shackle shapes for validation. So those aspects will be discussed as well in the DCAT-AP webinars and issues to facilitate the adoption. In that, how we work, so we usually collect first feedback for a period of time. We create, based on that, some draft proposals. We share that to the community via webinars. Based on that feedback that we collect, and then yes or no's on these proposals, we create a candidate specification, which goes then to another review, public review, so that we have a more stable pair of eyes have looked at it, and then finally we do the release. So this is the usual way of working, and so today we are at essentially proposing a draft specification proposals based on the existing legislation and on the feedback on the questions that we already saw on GitHub. But of course, that might become more, and then we then take up in the next rounds. As mentioned, so DCAT-AP is an active community. We had recently, in the past months, 2 webinars, one on general issues and topics that were being raised, one more specifically on the alignment with DCAT-3 and Dataset series. And today we start a track and attention point on high-value datasets. As you see, we already planned a follow-up webinar at the end of March, because we feel that there's a lot of things to discuss, and it would be good to consolidate this in the next webinar. So what is currently ongoing today? We have issue handling in DCAT-AP, so which we're addressing. We have this alignment with DCAT-3, and we start today high-value datasets activity. But this is not all. So we look a bit further. If we look for what is in DCAT-AP as well activity, is that we have, of course, taking up new issues that the community is raising, but there's this activity around data spaces, and there's a lot of sharing of information in a broad sense, and the DCAT-AP is an activity or an aid, a supporting act to that. And we look as well to possible use and support from DCAT-AP to other legislative requirements. So what we want to do today with you is that we have prepared a number of proposals, and we would like to hear your feedback on that, and in different ways. So what we will do is we will introduce each proposal, then we have a short open discussion. If we feel that there's consensus reached, we consider the proposal adopted. If we feel that there is still open debates and discussions, or discussion take too long, we will take it offline, move it to GitHub, further on the discussion, and develop and try to propose or adopt the proposal or extend the proposal for the next webinar. So that is the objective, the way how we're going to work. If you have beyond this, these proposals and so on, you feel, oh, I missed something, and this I have these questions or suggestions and so on, file them on GitHub or send them out. And as well, if you feel that you need to share this information with your colleagues, as Pavlina mentioned, the meeting minutes and the recordings will be available to be shared. Is there any question on the organization, the governance, how it will work from the community around the table?
Hi, Bert. Here's Uwe Vogels from Contera. I have a question. What is the relation to the new standard working group of the OGC, which is creating a new GeoDCAT profile, I guess, as an OGC standard?
Okay, that's good. That's indeed a novel activity. We are participating as CEMIC in the working group. So what has happened is that in the context of the geospatial community, there felt the need for creating an improved profile for geospatial data, even beyond what is currently on DCAT. And we have, as CEMIC, we maintain DCAT-AP. And what will happen is that probably some generic aspects will move to this new profile. And this is our goal, is to make the triangle fine, namely that you can use DCAT, then use your profile GeoDCAT if you have, if you want to use it in your context, and that GeoDCAT-AP is the joint and profile of DCAT-AP and GeoDCAT. That's the
Okay.
objective of
Thank
the
you.
work that we want to realize.
But you will directly be involved in the work of the standard working group at OGC?
We invited ourselves into it because we found it very valuable and important that we were around the table to realize this this perspective. That's so, but it's an open, so it's still we don't know where it entirely goes yet. So it is an open starting discussion. I don't know how broad and how extensive it will be at the moment. How we realized. So, but we take care of the alignment. That's our main participation role in that working group.
Good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions that I might not see? If not,
I have a question or suggestion, if I can jump.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm working for the Joint Research Center in ISPRA, Italy, from the European Commission, working as part of the GRC Inspire team. So my question is, how do you envisage the coordination with, especially for geospatial data sets, according to the rules governing the Inspire metadata? Because as you know, there is an overlap, quite important overlap between high-value datasets in the open data implementing Act regulation and the Inspire themes. So I think this this coordination should be somehow taken out as well.
Yeah. So in today, we have not taken up that in an active manner, but I think it's good that let's sit together on that and to see if this has certain particular impacts on it. What is from the perspective of now DCAT-AP, and I'll take that one, that has been designed with the perspective of Inspire aligned DCAT-AP structure. So there's a lot of Inspire requirements and aspects into it. And my proposal would be to enhance this relationship using this activity with high-value data sets to make it clear as well with the Geo DCAT in OGC to separate the things of concerns and to make this very clear for everybody. And I think your expertise and is certainly needed to say, okay, this is important for Inspire, how we formulate it and how we can bring it into it. It should be doable in to our vision. So at least the proposals, what we will see today, will not hamper or temper this aspect of the geospatial. But the geospatial might go beyond.
Thank you.
Did I miss other hands raised?
Bert, we should proceed with the report. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so what I will give now is a short introduction on the regulation, but more from a perspective of highlighting what are the metadata requirements in the text. I'm not going to read out every aspect, I'm just going to give you elements that are in the text so that the next of the proposal building can be associated with this. So as you know, the legislative background is the Open Data Directive and the implementing regulation on high-value data sets. There's Article 3, if you look into it, into the implementing regulation, where a lot of terms are introduced: bulk downloads, quality of service, API documentation, point of contacts, etc. So these elements we will take up and have proposals upon to visualize or to get this in DCAT-AP metadata. If we look then to the annex itself, then you see typically a pattern coming back at the end of the descriptions of each data category. Published datasets with open legal conditions, often and usually referred to related or equivalent to CC by 4.0, with a bulk download, with an API, and according to the best practice and agreements imposed by the relevant legislation. So this is typical structure of the annex, and these are elements, hence, that we want to take up as well in the metadata and make it visible. There is no list of let's say one by one precisely described data sets with a name that's not available, but it's identified by a circumscription of the content. For those who are not aware of it, so for instance, if you look to HighValue data for buildings, then it says the buildings data sets that are in scope of the Inspire data team with these granularities and must provide the following content: a unique identifier, geometry, number of floors, type of use. So this is, the data set is circumscribed, and to know this is what has to be considered as the HighValue data set for buildings. So in addition to that information, there's often, not always, but often in the annex mentioned that the identified data sets have to be published with information about the structure and the semantics of the data. So in this regular, not always in this formulation mentioned, but this is a regularly, frequently occurring sentence that comes into the place. And again, we want to provide a proposal on that. If we look and then further on in not to the annex then, but to the last article, or the second last article actually, that's on the reporting requirements. And in the reporting requirements, there are as well a number of aspects that relate to the metadata. So like online reference to metadata, there must be licensing conditions being expressed. There must be persistent links available for the licensing and for the APIs, etc. So these things are available into it. Bringing to that, what we want to do is that we know, and this is many of the member states have DCAT-AP catalogs available. So the question is that we can raise how we can adapt and what is the effort that member states have to do to change these current metadata descriptions in order to satisfy the previous mentioned requirements. Then as well, how the member states can fulfill the reporting requirements. So if you have now annotated well according to our agreements, the DCAT-AP agreements here, then do we support or can we easily support the reporting requirements? And in addition, and this is another perspective, and is of course why this is all done, is we take a perspective from the outside, from the citizen, from the business that visit our data portals, and they want to see this is a high-value data set. They want to know this is being maintained on a higher level of standards of quality. And so how we share that, how we make that visible, and how can DCAT-AP support in that activity. So that are the summary of the challenges and the objectives that we want to realize with it. Are there any questions on this? Short. No. Okay. Then I quickly give you an aspect on DCAT-AP to finalize, and then we are fine in time. So as you know, and this is something that we have to realize while building the proposals, is that the today's activity is that DCAT-AP is used in many portals, and that these portals form a network of harvesting. So the information of one catalog is aggregated and moved in another catalog. And this means that there's a connecting and network from one to the other. So we have here, for instance, in the center, the Interoperability, which harvests a lot and has a lot of data, but there may be specialized data portals that only want to show at some team, some subset of it, everything about mobility in the NAP core aspect. Or in your member states, you have maybe one central portal for open data and another one for geodata. Maybe it's merged together. You have city portals, regional portals, and this whole everything forms a complex network of information that is of referencing to the data sets that are available. And DCAT-AP, of course, that's what it exists for, is to make this exchange of catalogs possible and in a coherent, in a standard way. For those who are not aware and or familiar too much with DCAT-AP, this is a typical diagram that we have today. And what's in there? We have the notion of a catalog, and a catalog is a collection of data sets and data services and distributions that offer access to those data sets. And as you see in the information model, these are independent information structures. They are connected with each other and they have their own life cycle. And that is, I want to stress this a bit because that might have impact in our decisions later on. Are there any other questions so far? Because then we are right on time. And Anastasia.
Yes, we have foreseen a short break, but I think we can continue because it's early now for a break, and we can see if there is a need for a break later. So.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, what we have on our agenda. If we look to it, we have identified while reading and doing the preparation 8 different challenges. And that are the ones that we want to present to you and have a feedback upon on if this proposal that we think is a starting point for discussion is a good proposal and can be realized together with us. The first one I will introduce is about how to identify that a data set is in scope of a high-value data set in the high-value data set regulation. So we have to annotate that. And in that annotation, we can do 2 levels, either a global, saying this is a high-value data set, or we can annotate and say, okay, actually it is a high-value data set for this data category. And our proposal is that we create a new property, high-value dataset category, and that indicates which is the high-value dataset category to which this entity, this dataset, this data service, this distribution belongs. And based on that notion of belonging to a dataset category, we know that this is a high-value dataset. Belongs to this regulation. The advantage of this is that you don't have to say it's high-value datasets and then a category. So we only ask for doing just annotating only the category, and that means as well being present and being as active in the datasets. in the regulation. Why it's annotating each of them, and this is something where I come into the catalogs, the network. So if you look to the buildings data set, then a building data set can be exposed in various ways, various APIs, using an Inspire API, but as well using another REST API that was being built for the building data set. And it can be distributed according to the Inspire regulation using the Inspire XML structures, or using another structure, a JSON structure that has been built for the REST or in context of this REST API. It is so that in DCAT-AP, datasets, distribution, data service, and dataset series, if I'm taking that into account, are independent entities. So you cannot just say I indicate only one element, the dataset, but I have to give the elements that are inside the scope of the high-value dataset directive, because the high-value dataset directive imposes only a few quality measures on the accessibility, on the presence, on the way, the form, the representation, and to know which one are in scope and must be satisfying that one, we have to explicitly annotate that. So this means that for each entity, we have to provide the category to which it belongs. So our proposal is, and a question to the community now, do you agree with annotating the entities with the dataset category to which it belongs? That's the question, the open topic to indicate and be part of the high-value datasets regulation scope. Any feedback? I see Mika has raised his hand.
Matthias also is saying that he doesn't understand why there is a need to tackle the distribution.
The question on why the need to tackle as every entity, even in distribution, is that if it's on the distribution, there are many distributions, and not all distributions are listed in the regulation. So in the regulation, there is only one distribution mentioned, the bulk download. Maybe for the Inspire case, there might be that they say, according to the Inspire, there must be others, but in the explicit lists, there is in the regulation, there is explicit mentioning only about typically one distribution.
So I have a question here, Matthias here. Exactly what you're talking about, the distribution. I understand that the regulation says one thing. What is the need from the portal perspective, or when you are searching for high-value datasets? Clearly, it's enough with a tag on the dataset. By the regulation requirements, the conforms to, which I think is the C7 issue we are going to talk later about, could be combined with a way of saying that a specific the regulation that a specific distribution is fulfilled, or even the quality measurement, which is also discussed in GitHub. So I think maybe it would be enough on the dataset level, and the rest can be, well, reasoned. Yeah, you can understand that from the context of the other metadata.
Yeah, and at this moment the reason why I put it is because I'm quite skeptical on that, to get it the right elements out of it for the reporting requirements in the end. I think for the portal, if you look for the portal owner, If so the citizen, you're right, and you're probably more sufficient have it with at the dataset level. I think at the level of the reporting requirement, there might be additional needs if we want to query and get the report out of it.
But just to continue, the regulation could be that you both have a downloadable file as well as an API. And to distinguish the two distributions, setting the category again on the distribution seems too much.
Okay.
I mean, what do you want to indicate? Not the category on the distribution level, it's something else.
You want to integrate that this is in the scope of the high-value dataset regulation. Okay, maybe the category is not the right word then. You're right.
We also have some questions in the chat why we don't use conforms to, or we don't use DCAT theme to indicate that we have a high value data set.
DCAT theme I would not use for that one, because then we have two meanings for DCAT theme. Currently DCAT theme is just an agreed code lists already existing for many years on how to organize the data sets and to annotate it. It has no association with the categories that are mentioned in the high-value directive. They're all totally independent. So these code lists are independent from each other. So it can be in the DCAT team education and be of a meteorological the high-value data sets. It could be like that. So this is they are two distinct. Yeah. So we have to best to distinguish on that. Are the other on DC terms conforms to, Bart, what is the objective? What do you want to realize on that?
But writes instead of a new property.
Instead of new property.
And Jakub mentioned that there are two dimensions, being high-value dataset and specification of the category. Category, in his opinion, belongs to the dataset level, being high-value datasets also, but there can be a discussion about this.
Okay, so I have combined in the proposal here the category and being in the scope of the directive. I have combined. So the I would maybe ask, is this a good idea to have that combined or not? Do you what maybe just I put a line in it, and the question is, do you agree if the category also indicates in scope of the high-value regulation, or should it be separate? So if you agree that this can be combined, then you said +1. If you say we should separate, we have a different property, you say -1. And if you don't know, 0.
Just for the members of the PSI Working Group, during the webinars that we're conducting under the semantic action, we are starting discussing several things, and we are asking for our audience to propose to express their opinion, as well as to vote. For the members of the PSI Working Group, this procedure may be not that familiarized, but we can also reassure that the issues, the things that we are discussing right now will be put into the GitHub space, so that you can always engage your colleagues and provide response to these issues, so that we can have a better view on what is the best solution to the open issues that are presented during this webinar.
Okay, so indeed, to mention on GitHub, we have created issues. You see it on the first slide of each topic number, and yeah, if you would have the slide, you can click on it and you go to the specific issue in our GitHub repository. I see no any more hands raised. There's a lot of okay, and clarity about it. Okay, then I would like to yes, the goal is not to use DCAT team. It was to use the to have the semantics of this category together with the this categorization with the semantics you belong to the high-value datasets, and that was the goal. Okay, I see still some people coming into it. I would like to know, there was a questions on how to derive something is in scope. So a question is every every distribution, and there's another question, is every distribution that is associated with a dataset that is in scope of the high-value dataset regulation a distribution you consider to be following the high-value dataset regulation? I would like to ask first that question. So you have many distributions here. One according to the Inspire format regulation case, one that you have decided yourself. Do you consider both distributions to be part of the subject of the high-value dataset regulation? So that's a second.
We have also here the proposal that I think it would be better to submit the proposals in advance in order to analyze them before agreeing on a pragmatic solution. I think all proposals are available under the related GitHub issues. So we posted them in advance, but you can visit and revisit GitHub to post your thoughts and what is your view. Also, there is an interesting question. Could it be possible that something should be marked as high-value dataset, even though it can't be put in a category yet?
Can you repeat, Natasha?
Yes. Could it be possible that something should be marked as high-value dataset, even though it can't be put in a category yet? probably meaning the categories that are predefined by the...
The thing is, that's implementation of interpretation of the legislation. And there I would say that the policy has to make a decision, because if you can, of course, you can apply the quality measures that are in the regulation to something that is not yet mentioned. That's that's a good practice maybe to do it or to consider it. That's the objective even maybe of the regulation. But it is not, let's say, mandatory to do it. I think we should keep the word high-value dataset still connected to something that is in the regulation. If we are going to disentangle that and say, okay, you can use it for anything, then probably everybody will call all their datasets high-value datasets. So I think Jiri and Daniele, maybe you can say something about that.
Hello, Jirka Pilar here. Just to better understand the question is whether we will indicate what the category of high-value datasets we are talking about.
No, the question is, if I have a dataset, I'm now taking what is a good example, and streets, something like that, and I find as member state this a very important dataset, but it's not mentioned in the regulation. It's not in scope. There's no scope definition that you have to do something for streets. But I tag it as high-value datasets.
Interesting one.
So that's the case. The question is then, of course, what does the value mean of the tagging of high-value datasets? Because then you go beyond the regulation scope, and then I don't know what I have, what it has to do with the reporting in the end, even, and so on.
Well, you can always go beyond as a member state, beyond the list of high-value data sets. That's for sure. On the other hand, there may be some practical difficulties when you go too much beyond. I would say when instead of 100 high-value data sets, you have 1,000, then it may become a bit confusing.
Ilka, I think that for us, the point should be, it's true as you say, what you say is that the regulation provides minimum requirements and then you can go beyond, but you can go beyond still within the framework of that regulation. So I think that, I don't know, now I say something at random, but if we define that geospatial information for a certain kind of data, maybe even streets or whatever, should be at least down to 1 to 5,000. And a certain country says, okay, I also want to make available under the same conditions data sets which correspond to 1 to 1,000, so even beyond the minimum, that's okay. But the high-value data sets as such is not just related to quality of any kind of data set. So a certain typology of data set which is not at all in the list of the regulation, either because it's not even in one of the 6 domains, or because it is not foreseen in the annex which lists precisely what should be high-value dataset. I should say it should not be labeled high-value dataset. It's not a quality stamp. The high-value dataset is something which is related to a certain regulation with certain obligations. So I would say in principle no, unless you go a bit beyond, but in terms of minimum requirements, not because you extend the scope, and otherwise there would be no sense in having a list of 6 domains. High-value datasets must belong to those 6 domains defined in the Open Data Directive. And we may enter into a process where we will define a new regulation, a new annex with new domains, which means that until then, there should not be high-value dataset belonging to, I do not know, agriculture.
Yeah. I think.
Am I correct, Ilke?
Well, it's still our opinions, and we would need to wait for the Court of Justice to give us an authoritative answer. But I agree with this approach. You can go beyond, but you should do it very carefully. Otherwise, you risk to endanger the whole point of having the implementing regulation on high-value datasets.
So my proposal on the metadata level is that the annotation that of the scoping is very closely related to what is listed into the regulation at the moment.
Yeah.
So
Okay, I think we don't have an outcome from this voting, so we can move the discussion to GitHub and proceed with the rest of the topics that we have to address today.
yeah.
And there is also, just to say this before we move to the next topic, there is a proposal from Geraldine that in Inspire there are tagging policies for priority dataset as well. So this could be an approach over here, and there are people that agree and support Geraldine's proposal, so maybe this should also be considered.
Can somebody explain me what this is, this priority? Because that would be good. Geraldine, maybe? Or Jordi, yeah.
I can try. So in Inspire, we had a kind of working line in which we are tagging those datasets that are really needed for environmental policy matters. So we have a system to tag these datasets as a priority dataset for these policy-related issues. So I guess that what Geraldine is proposing here is to apply something similar in the case for high-value datasets. So, and I want to add that also in the Inspire context, since we have this overlap between Inspire themes, not overlap, but it's a one-to-one relationship between the high-value dataset categories and the Inspire themes. In principle, we are not envisaging a categorization for high-value dataset categories because this is already embedded in the classification for Inspire themes. But some people in this webinar also said that we are having a webinar with the member states on the 3rd of March. So in which this kind of alternatives for tagging will be for sure discussed there. So I think that what should be needed here is to set up a classification system that works for the DCAT application profile, but also allows a clear mapping with the Inspire rules. So I think this should be considered as part of the requirements.
Yeah. Okay. That's really fine. That's I think we should do.
Okay, we can proceed, I think, because we are exceeding time.
Okay. Okay, so, okay, thank you. I see that Matthias is actually following the line of thought. Okay, let's, if you have more questions on GitHub, as mentioned by Flo, I don't know who was Florian before, it's 251, and for C2 now today, the other one on identifiers, it's 252. So what is there is that in the regulation as well, there's a requirement to have online reference for metadata. So in the reporting requirement, you find that reference or that statement on that. In order to guarantee that this online reference is available, we have in DCAT-AP a long-standing practice on high quality identifiers, which are as well URLs, so dereferenceable URIs. So if you apply for all your high value datasets this policy, this approach that you annotate and have URIs for your metadata, then this is satisfied. So in that sense, our proposal is for all metadata that falls under the scope of the high value datasets regulation, that you apply this guideline. That is our proposal. And that's the easiest fit. That is the current practice that we have. So what do people think about this? I see already Matthias and Bart saying +1. So this is the current, strengthening the current practice. So it goes from suggested to highly recommended mandatory for high value datasets.
Could I just add one more thing? Maybe not for now, but for the future, we could consider this to be a generic thing for all data sets, that you also are requiring that there are dereferenceable, that you get to something for each URI. Would that imply that you also can do the same for the distributions? That's also an open question. The contact points, the publishers, etc. Finally, you could also start to discuss whether it should be possible to require both RDF as well as HTML from these dereferenceable URIs. I think we cannot require that at this point, but it would be perhaps a strong recommendation.
Yeah, so this is indeed what Matthias, this regulation is enforcing if we towards that direction. And actually, there's topic, and I don't know from by heart, I think on licensing, and the next one is actually enforcing it. So for licenses, the community has to do some extra work. So I see that this one is easily adopted. So that is clear. So yeah, member states who are not yet taking care of this, yeah, please do. Otherwise, yeah, you are already in line, and that's good. Good. Next topic, license information. As I already mentioned, just in response to Matthias, there's more requirements on the level of licensing. Is that I first want to give you some feedback on how it works in DCAT-AP. So the principle that we up to now have honored is to indicate the legal information at the most precise level in the metadata description. What does that mean? Is that we annotate legal requirements and ways of use at the level of distribution and data service, and not at dataset or dataset series. Why? Because then we are sure that all the legal conditions that are being expressed are applicable for that representation, and not get to in confusion in saying, okay, another representation might have a slightly different one, and how to get to this. So otherwise it becomes very complicated to understand. We have as well a usage note in DCAT-AP that if you do not have persistent URIs for your licenses, then you can use the one from the Publications Office. And what we see is that the Publications Office, here I take the one which is regularly referenced in CC by 4.0, you can go there and you get machine readable data. So this is the state of affairs today and the way of practice in DCAT-AP. And if we apply that, that means that we will ask you to give license information at that level. There's not the intent or proposal is not to change it, to move it to the dataset or dataset series, although it may be in wording be in the regulation as saying provide legal and licensing information for the dataset. In DCAT-AP high-value datasets, for high-value data, this will be at the level of distribution and service, keeping in the way, using the property DCT license, but with additional quality measures coming from the regulation, with a URI to the license. This is what the regulation as well expects, is the URI must be dereferenceable and must provide machine readable and human readable text. Now, it's allowed in DCAT-AP to have your own licenses. Yeah? So every member state has its own legal context for licensing. You might have an extra text that is added to it. So this is, if you create your own licenses, you have to ensure that you fall into the above. But there's an additional requirement. There should be somehow an indication how open this license is. Today, we don't have a clear relationship with a standard representation of other licenses. So I have my local license, my in Belgium or in Germany, and I want to know, is this local license something similar like CCC by 4.0 or CCC 0 or whatever? How do I denote this? And there we might have to add additional properties. Here are two properties, and leave it open for the community, but there are two levels. Either you say all same as, it's exactly the same, but another representation in my local context, in my legal representation in my language, or I say RDFC also, saying it should be similar like that, but it's maybe phrased in a little different way. So that is today, let's say, the proposal to make it more strict, to apply it the DCAT-AP, but with persistent URIs. And I did some search on the Interoperability just to indicate that this is already work that can start today, and where some work is to be done. If you look and ask for all the licenses, you get about 700,000 differences. About 500,000 are blanks, have no URIs, so you have to do something more. If you look to more in the details of it, some have some properties like DCT identifier pointing to a text string CCC by 4 or something like this. So there is some notion of the license behind. So that has to be worked. If I look to member states, Czechia and Belgium, there are URIs in there. But you have different ways to find out whether or not this is aligned by CC by. So that just indicate that there are two possibilities on there. And then there, if you slim down to it, then you get about 500 candidates that have looks like to have URIs, but how they are aligned with CC BY or others, we don't know yet. So this is just to give you an indication of the efforts that you already can do today by applying these rules, and that will, let's say, get the benefit for all data sets that are available, not only for the high-value data sets, but to the all. So our proposal is this: use at the level of distribution, data service, but with firm URIs. You have to be aware, you have to provide them dereferenceable, machine readable, human readable, and we have to provide a relationship with the existence of CCC BY so that this can be assessed somehow.
Bert?
Yeah.
Geraldine calling here. Our licenses there, we always have the reuse license over there, and all the other not open licenses are moved to the DCT rights property. So I think maybe it's okay indeed for all the real open high-value data sets, but maybe there are not open high-value data sets as well. Certainly if we derive from the geospatial approach. So I don't know if it's always the case that we can use otherwise the CC BY explanation at the one hand, and also only the DCT license. I think it's needed to be a combination with license and rights to have it all. Yeah, I don't think we have a simple explanation for this one, I think. Only if we look in Flanders only, there are 4 licenses provided, and everybody can use their own as well. So yeah, I don't think it is a clear answer for a regulation to have one license provided and only in one attribute.
Wait. There's an and this is the regulation. What it says. That's not what I'm saying. So there is the regulation says you have to provide it with a URI, machine readable, and human text. This is in the regulation. So every data set that falls under the regulation must be provided with licensing information, at least in this way. So that is what is stated there. DCAT-AP has the ability to express it if we apply roughly these rules. But that's it. I cannot fight the regulation. So that's.
We have some feedback, Bert, in the chat. So we have negative votes for restriction to code list. And also we have the feedback that all same RDFC also is not the desired solution. Also, maybe, let me check, Bart Hansen's proposal.
So there's indeed DC type on the license, but DC type on the license just gives you a code list that is it's the kind of openness of the license, but that's not what is in the regulation. In the regulation, it is expressing how it is more precisely related to as reference point CCC BY 4.0. That's more the reference point that you should be able to make from each license.
Sorry, can you clarify? Does the regulation explicitly state CC BY 4.0?
It states using an open license.
Because I mean, a more permissive license like CC0,
or more permissive license
okay.
Like this. So it's but what I mean here is it's very regular. You indicate a relationship with a license. It can be that you say it's related to CC0 or a very closed, I don't care about, but we should know to which one we relate so that we can assess in the end how permissive of how open the local license is. The goal is to enable local licensing, but to know in how much it is related to something that is more commonly known.
Jirka and Daniel, can you help us on this?
The ground rule is that CC BY is mentioned typically as the license that member states should use, but each time also they can use any equivalent or less restrictive open license.
Okay, great. I think the approach with we have now in DCAT-AP is very straightforward. We should just follow it, have a license on the distribution, as you say. I don't entirely understand why we're not allowing it to be on the dataset level, since the new DCAT to allow that. If in the case that there is no distinction between the distributions, why would we need to have a more restrictive approach just in this case with the high-value datasets? I don't get that. Yeah, and then also whether, so the question for me is still, do we restrict to specific URIs here or not? Do we allow other URIs to the same license? The nice approach would be not that everyone when they provide their metadata has to provide a lot of extra same as relations to other URIs for the same license. That would just bog down the actual metadata expression for every data set. I think it would make more sense if that would be maintained in, for instance, the European, the Publication Office vocabulary, where you have a lot of same as relations there in one place. And if you use any of the URIs in that vocabulary, you are fine.
Yeah, so I think the Publications Office code list could be enhanced and be more improved to support the needs here. That certainly. There is, I think we cannot impose that this is the only licensing URI to be used, because member states would like to have their own expression or say this is our variant and so on. So but here what I added to it is you have to relate it to one of them in the code list of the Publications Office, so that we at least have an indication of what is it, without starting to understand Italian or Bulgarian or Dutch, that you at least can start to do an understanding of it.
I would still argue that we could enrich the Publication Office list with these same as links for the common ones. So if you happen to use another URI, I mean, for instance, we are using the one from the Creative Commons themselves, those addresses to the licenses seemed appropriate at the point. Okay. I don't see a real need to change that. I think they're probably already understood by everyone. Although there are a difference whether you should have the HTTPS or not, or there would be DID or something at the end. There is a lot of variants, but adding those would be sufficient. I would argue again in that direction. If you use another license that is not one of those same as, then there could be a requirement that you have to have a relation more general or more permissive or whatever. But that is a vocabulary in its own.
Your comment was to the last thing to restrict the target list to the Publications Office. That was the last thing. You say leave that open. Huh?
I think it's enough that we have one of those URIs that are same as in the Publication Office. That would be enough, I would argue.
Okay, thank you.
Could I disagree?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, please.
I don't know if you have really used data extensively, but I'm doing analysis of data sets extensively. And if you don't have a single set of URIs for describing the license, it's a real mess. Makes the license attribute useless. So I strongly recommend, but not for the reason, because I understand that some flexibility will be needed, but a specific group of IRIs defining what are the different licenses, like is said in DCAT-AP, I guess is absolutely necessary. Because otherwise, if you are willing to say how many Creative Commons data sets is in the European Open Data Portal, what's the answer? You cannot have the answer. You are not going to assess the million data sets there if you don't have a specific URIs for the licenses.
I'll give you an example here, Alberto, in the sense that you see the ones on from Czech Republic. There are 800, almost 200,000 URIs into it. You can do, they're all dereferenceable, and you can ask to them what they are aligned to. So you can find via dereferencing. Of course, it is a cross data sets querying effort to know what they actually mean, because you get a unique identifier per each distribution from the Czech Republic, and you have to do an extra step to find out whether it is aligned to CC BY or CC0 or whatever. That's what you.
No, but I don't mean that they have to have the same license. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if we are defining CC BY, there is a single dereferenceable URI for defining that. Like in a DCAT-AP is available. So that there is a list of around.
This is a code list. The code list.
Exactly. The code list is in a DCAT-AP is marvelous. Marvelous because it's quite strict, and you say, oh, this is this license and I can process it. Sorry, I want you to put into the boots of the people who are actually using many data sets and not just people who are just browsing one or 10 of them. If we are dealing with hundreds, thousands or millions, if we don't have this, don't put the license. It doesn't matter. Nobody is going to assess manually 1,000 data sets for the license. Nobody.
Yeah, but yes, the goal is, this is what the requirement is stating. So using URIs, I think people agree to it.
Exactly.
So that's the not the point, I think. So people agree to it. This is even required by the regulation. It should be human and machine readable available.
Human, okay, but I don't think it's that important, human. Maybe if you're a professional user, you don't care that much.
I'll leave it open in the sense that in the end, if there's a legal dispute, then the human text becomes very important.
No, but I guess that you could have a kind of a human readable thing, but let's say the machine readable thing, how could avoid that? So it's so necessary. So I don't want to discuss this, because if you are using data sets, you really need it. It's absolutely needed.
This could be harmonized on the portal level when you harvest metadata and add the additional triples needed to make sure that you have the correct
I wouldn't do that at portal level. What if you are merging? I'm merging to 170 data portals in Spain.
Yeah, sure. But this is
are you thinking that I'm going to harmonize this? No, there is no.
I'm doing the same thing in Sweden, so I'm sure in other countries as well. It's not a problem to add a few triples. The issue is perhaps if you have multiple triples and you want to faceted search or something based on license, and you have multiple licenses for each data set, and becomes a presentation issue. How do you show it? So then there might be a problem. So I understand what you're saying, Alberto, and I agree and I disagree. I disagree because we have a history that we didn't have this vocabulary from the beginning. And we have a lot of different countries that have licenses, both in Germany, I think Czech Republic, and In Sweden, we have done a different approach as well, using the Creative Commons ones. So how do we handle the history? Do we have to, can we find a way forward? And maybe the way forward is to transform the metadata in the harvesting step into the agreed upon licenses for those based on same as relations.
No, I could agree on that because we have a history and the migration will be tough. Yeah, it will take a work. But think on the other way around. What if we kept? If we keep the way it is, this attribute won't be very useful. So somehow we are, let's say, avoiding a more structured and useful way to be into place. So, but I agree that the migration will take quite an effort and quite a time. Yeah.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt you. It's very interesting discussion, but can we take it to GitHub because we have to address another 4 important topics. So
Sure.
let's try to summarize what was the outcome of the discussion on the specific topic. I think that we all agree on URIs for licenses. For the code list, I don't think that we have a clear point. And for the proposed properties, RDFSC also and also MAS, maybe we can take you can take your proposals on GitHub.
Yeah, that's indeed the goal here to see what is the best to GitHub. Okay. On this one is C4 is more explanation on how it works in DCAT. So the topic is 254 on bulk downloads. So bulk downloads, what is that for terminology of as in the regulation? Is a functionality that allows you to get the whole data sets as a copy on your local computer, on your local computing instance. For that, in the past, we have been discussing on what is the terminology to be used and to capture, and this satisfies fits very much the notion of a distribution. So what we will propose is an high-value dataset bulk download is denoted as a distribution of a high-value dataset. There are some questions. Of course, you have to have access to this bulk download. In DCAT-AP, there are 2 properties. One is mandatory properties, the other one is optional. Access URL is mandatory. It means a place, a location, a URL where you can find information to access the downloads. It may already start the download, but it may as well provide you information how to access or to get to the downloads. And if you would have a direct access, and when you say if you click on it and you immediately can always download it without any other requirements, then the property download URL is proposed to be used. So this is really the machine readable, where the machine, or you can say the link behind download, this is the download URL. Since there is no clear statement in the regulation that that every bulk download is publicly downloadable, we don't see the need of putting more stricter requirements on those properties than already exist. So we would just say we stay to the statement bulk downloads are denoted as DCAT-AP distributions. It will be clear stated it's not public. No, it's left in the middle. So Mikai, so there's in the regulation, it's left open what it is, how you can, if the access is always public. So we don't, it might be that is in even high. Okay, so it's just not specified in so it has to be public. It leaves open that option. And then for Mantas, if a high-value data set is split in multiple fragments per year, That is, I don't know. That will be in principle if you look to the broadest sense as downloadable of the regulation, probably this could fit to it. But we have to see into that. That will be depending on each of the regulation, of each annex, of each specific case. But I think this is clear. Okay, well, let's move to the next one. On API representations. The term API is used in the regulation. And if you see it in the regulation, that's defined as a set of functions, procedures, definitions, and protocols for machine-to-machine communication and the seamless exchange of data. That closely corresponds to a formulation that we find in DCAT for data service. So our proposal is to use for the API representation in line as well with the guidelines for DCAT-AP, that this is a data service. So that's the first proposal. Based on that, we know that there are two properties important for APIs and data services: endpoint URL and endpoint description. So let's use them. You can express what is the endpoint, the real endpoint, and what is the metadata about the service and where you find the description. So this is all fine. But there's an additional requirement in the reporting that says there must be persistent link to APIs. That's a statement into the reporting. And so DCAT-AP has this recommendation on using URIs for the entities in the catalog, including data services, but has no requirement imposed yet on the endpoint URL. So there's no statement that this should be persistent or so. Now, in the context of this regulation, is the intention of that we did a touch point that this persistency is applied on both aspects, both on the data service and on the endpoint URL. So the goal is that everybody does his efforts to make the both items as persistent as possible. So this is the proposal. Maybe we can make it from recommended to mandatory, but what is your opinion about it?
I realized that there is one problem. Some services don't have a root URI, which is actually dereferenceable. You just have to provide a lot of different parameters to access various aspects of the API, but there is no generic starting point. We could just avoid this problem and say, hey, API developers, please get your shit together and provide a starting point.
That is, I think, the intention as well behind this regulation, I think, to make it as persistent as possible. So this is the quality level on that level. So that's the interpretation we shared with the preparation team on that. Mika?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear.
Yeah, I was just thinking that if you compare this to API portals in general, there's a lot of different kind of lot of more information. So if you want to make it like customer orientated, that people can really use these APIs, maybe we should have like long-term some kind of planning, what kind of we should put in there, because if you ask people who are doing the programming, they say that this is not enough. But maybe in long run we get, because these days the service is just like a couple of attributes. So it's quite hard to reuse those APIs. There's a lot of information lacking.
So wait, I'll go back here. There's one element pointed to in the DCAT specification, endpoint description. So this one is highly recommended to provide. So not only the endpoint itself, where you can do the machine querying, you can interact with the API, but as well the description to provide that.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, RESTful APIs, it could be something like open APIs documentation or something like that.
Yes, indeed. So that's the goal for that property endpoint description, that we can point you to that and to give you a hint as a visitor of the data portal. Okay, here you can find the endpoint description. So this is already part of the specification. And
so for instance, in data catalog, it could be the actual page where all the information about APIs, all the documentation, how to use it, how to get it. Is there like some kind of program examples and all this discussion and all this stuff is existing in this endpoint URL?
That could be associated with the endpoint description, but we target with DCAT-AP mostly to a little bit more technical description of the endpoint. The other one, and that's connected with quality of service and other information, usage information. We don't have separate properties for that. But we have one generic property called the landing page that could be used as an index or the first page where you can go for all kind of information. So that would be tackling that aspect.
Okay, because basically in Finland we have like almost 15 years already open APIs, and there's a lot of different kind of barriers with that. So if there is enough service level, people can't really use the data. Is there some kind of blocking or rating or cutting the kind of how many questions you can ask and all this stuff? So this is at the beginning. I think this is beginning, but not the end. So I think to get it really function, we need a lot of more things, and we have to come up some kind of agreement how to do it, because the whole DCAT API, it's just mostly for files. So you can see if you check the whole thing, you can see that it has been developed for files and not APIs. So
well, if you look to data services, that's really API oriented, huh? So this
yeah, but it does like a couple of attributes. So
yeah, the goal is here, and I think the objective of the DCAT cataloging and information is to provide sufficient information as pointers to find your information, to be like an index or a dictionary, to act as a dictionary. The catalog should act as a dictionary that you go to the real service platform or the API platform. So that is the minimum information we want to associate and collect in the data service, because every data service platform like you have, the API platform that you have, has a lot of information. And if we start to disentangle it in different aspects, then it becomes very complicated and very specific. So the goal is more like here for this aspect to be a good dictionary, an index, pointer.
Okay, so in practical level, for instance, in Finland, we could have multiple API portals, and we just have to add the links where to find
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, and ensuring that you cover all the information that is needed. Okay. So just coming back to Natasha, if there anything on the persistency we have to take care now.
Jakob says if it is okay if the persistency of the URLs is achieved by an HTTP level redirection service like w3id.org. This is a question, yes.
I think in the regulation, nothing is stated about how it is realized. It's so how this is ensured and how it's been done. That is left open.
Okay. Then I think we can proceed, Bert. I suppose that we have an agreement.
I would like also to address to the PSI Working Group. I think, as you can see here, the most familiarized members of basically from the DCAT-AP Working Group are participating, but I don't. We want like to feel a bit detached from the whole procedure. I think that it may look a bit weird as a procedure to you. So I would like to give the floor to any member of the people that didn't have the chance to address any issue or to raise a question or share some feedback right now. Is anybody want to take the floor before moving to the rest of the issues? We have prepared a number of issues that there's not sufficient time to tackle all of them. But does anyone want to take the floor and raise some thoughts, some concerns from the rest of the audience? Do you feel that you should involve other colleagues that are more technical, that are working on the technical part that are not participating in this webinar? Martin says yes from Austria.
Thanks, I raised my hand.
Yes, please go ahead.
University of the Netherlands. I'm not well prepared to all those issues because I haven't seen these issues before. So what was mentioned in the first issue is also applicable to all other issues that need some time to evaluate what is proposed in the issue. So it will be very helpful if we can not agree yet on this moment on all those issues, but get some time to evaluate and give comments on it. Thank you.
Definitely, the aim was this webinar to try to disambiguate the law and see how this goes. This can be interpreted into DCAT-AP properties and additions. Definitely, we want to make take a firm decision to specific specific issues, but we wanted to take this exercise and see how the legal document can be technically implemented. So in that sense, that's why we addressed both groups, but there may be still people that are not involved from member states and also should be involved. Mika and Jure. Mika first.
Yeah, I was just thinking we have been discussing in Finland a lot. Should we have like one national API portal? Because otherwise, all the kind of there will be a lot of API portals, and then it's very difficult to find the right APIs because there's hundreds of thousands of maybe APIs in Finland in public sector. So I was just thinking, is there any kind of bigger picture planning, because now we got the Data Government Act and we have this open data APIs and all this stuff. So there could be like a lot of we have to come up some kind of API infrastructure anyway, and it would be wise that we don't do the same work multiple times. So is there any kind of does anybody knows, is there some kind of discussion or debating about this matter? I think at least a couple of I think France and maybe some other European countries are already done have done their national API portal or something like that. So it would be nice to hear if people have some kind of ideas on that. Thanks.
Jirka and Daniel, can you address this about the big picture? If the regulation foresees something like this?
Can you please rephrase the question? I'm not sure I understood the point here.
I think that the concern is about the APIs that are created by the member state and what those APIs can be used and what is foreseen by the regulation, which also links to the obligation that member states has to publish their the HighValue dataset, the information about their dataset in the data.europa.eu. So, if I'm rephrasing correct the question, that's it.
I'm sorry. I think I had some problems in listening to exactly what you said at the end, so I'm not still sure that I understand the question. It's related to the APIs?
Yes, it is related to the APIs that are created by different member states, such as the case of Finland, and whether there is what is the bigger picture on how member states will tackle their APIs related to what is foreseen by the regulation. That the member states are obliged to publish their metadata in data.europa.eu. Am I, to the person that raised the question, am I rephrasing the question appropriately? Mika, it was Mika.
Yeah. So basically, I was just saying that we have in public sector in Finland, we have a lot of different kind of APIs. And now we are creating a lot of different kind of API portals. And we have been discussing, is this necessary? Because we could end up doing a lot of APIs portal, maybe tens different kind of APIs portals or hundreds different kind of APIs portals, because now people are doing their own portal in every kind of government office. So we have been discussing, should we have like one national API portal where you can find all the APIs, like now with the open data. So you can find all the in country contact points, for instance, in Finland, open data.fi, you should find all the open data in Finland over there. So should we have something similar with the APIs? And I was thinking, because I have seen that some of the member states have already done something like that. In France they have this kind of portal where they have started collected the APIs information, metadata of information of APIs, what exists in France. So I was just thinking, is there some kind of planning in process or some kind of big picture? Because now we probably get API information in Data Governance Act, we get API information in Open Data Directive, and much more. So there's a lot of, we are collecting the same thing and we have same kind of metadata information, but now it's we don't handle it as a one single thing. That basically we are doing a lot of kind of work. I think we have like one big picture how to handle the APIs in the national level.
Yeah, understood. So yeah, well, maybe it goes beyond my technical understanding of the details, but what I can say is that indeed we have planned to adapt the data.europa.eu in order to take into account the fact that there will be data sets available through APIs. So the way in which this can be made concrete in technical terms, and the way in which this can become visible and workable in the data.europa.eu European portal, this I cannot yet say. But indeed, that's something that we have in mind, even if I can say now when and in which way. But probably this is also worth to be explored further with you. But maybe once we will have a bit more understanding of the way in which these APIs are created. There are already a lot of them out, of course, but yeah, maybe once there will be a certain number of operational APIs coming from the obligation of this regulation, then maybe we can at the same time try to understand. But yes, there is at least something is planned to be implemented.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe to add just shortly to it, in that DCAT-AP, you have to see it, the activity that we do today is a mean to aid you in that effort. It's not obligatory to use. There's no, let's say, statement that you should use only the DCAT-AP usage case, but it's a mean to aid you into that activity. And as shown on the diagram here, you can have multiple API portals on your own, but then maybe federate the metadata into some global or not. It's up to you what you can do. But this is what DCAT-AP is enabling you to do, to have this freedom and still be giving a global overview.
Very short comment from Sweden here that we've done part of that. I think that other countries have done it as well, with using the data services in DCAT to generate a data portal containing both data sets and data services. So Mika, if you want to discuss the technical details and how that can be done, yeah, don't be a stranger. We are pretty close.
Actually, we have done it already like 1 year or 2 years ago. So we have already up and running. So we have the latest version of the DCAT API in Finland, and we have been updating it as soon as always when the new version is stable. We are updating our portal. But anyway, I have been playing around with APIs many years, and maybe 10 years, 15 years. I have written the book about it. And I see that the DCAT API, it could be going forward with supporting more APIs information, metadata of APIs. So I was just thinking, I think this will be going. We are anyway. Let's say 5 years in future, 10 years in future, we have to describe APIs much further. So I was just thinking out loud about this matter, but yeah. We have this data service in DCAT API. We are already doing it, and you can get all the information what is supported with DCAT API from Finland. But I think we need more in future if we are asking the people who are actually using the open data and using the government information, reusing the government information. So. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mika, but because we are running a bit out of time, and Jore also raised his hand, and I think that Berto wants to make an addition. Berto? And then
no, it's just fine. Just waiting that we can go ahead with the next topic, or if some other questions was.
Jore raised his hand.
Okay, thanks, colleagues, for the floor. I'm just it's a more generic comment here that I just want to mention that I think the main purpose of this meeting is to have a common understanding of the legal provisions for implementing the high-value data sets, amongst which metadata, which we are discussing now in the form of DCAT. But if you look, and I just want to point that out to at least in 3 out of the 6 categories in the annex for the high-value datasets, you have the regulatory provision that the metadata should follow, the description of metadata should follow the metadata implementing regulation provided by Inspire already. So I would really strongly ask you to make a proposal based on this meeting that we can take forward to our community as well, the Inspire community, and we'll have a thorough discussion on how to map all these metadata elements that we already have in legislation to the DCAT app. We've done this in the past in the GeoDCAT app implementation, but since you're now discussing a different approach, and I think also what Geraldine raised on the licensing issue to use the rights field rather than the other URL approach, then I think these things should be discussed as well in our community. And if we have a proposal based on this meeting, a draft proposal, that we can take this forward to see what are the remaining discussion items and come back to you with a proposal from our side as well that try to map the Inspire metadata elements to this DCAT API proposal. I think that would be a good way forward that would satisfy the needs of all regulatory obligations out there regarding open data, and would also satisfy the needs of implementers who have been implementing the Inspire regulation for the last 15 years. So we are trying to, we have a meeting next week, and our main objective, of course, is to reuse as much as possible from the existing implementations, and at the same time satisfy the regulatory obligations under the high-value datasets. Just a small comment, but just to say that it's in the geospatial reference data, the environmental and health observation data, and in the mobility data, you will find the arrangement for publication and use that says that the metadata describing the data shall contain at least the metadata elements defined in the Commission regulation on metadata under the Inspire directive, which is 1205/2008. Just to let you know, as a kind of a boundary condition.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bert, we have to close this C5 topic that we are now, and there are 3 remaining topics, but I don't think that we have time to complete them
I would
today.
close 5
Yes.
entirely because there are a few minor things, and then I can introduce shortly, and I don't know how much time we have then after, to just so that you know which are the topics that were prepared.
Perfect.
Okay, so on the API, to close down on it, if you look to the texts, then you find 2 terms into it, words into it, terms of use and quality of service. And for each of them, we have a proposal to handle. One is for terms of use. We consider that as the same activity as documenting the license. So what you do with each data set around the legal obligations, and so to express that, right, that would be covering the terms of use. So that is our proposal. So not to interpret it in another document or something like this. To use, if you do the licensing correct, you do as well terms of use correct. That's our proposal. Just quickly, if people would agree to that or not, or see that this is something different. Jacob, you would do something different?
Yeah, so actually in Czechia, there is just a little bit different legal system around copyright. So that's why I keep having those comments that the actual license is not enough for Czechia and Slovakia as well. The problem is that you have your distribution of the data set, and sometimes there is just nothing to give license to because it's just freely accessible. And those are terms of use. Then if there is something protected by copyright, then you can license it to be used under CC by 4, let's say. But those are separate things. So from this point of view, yeah, those terms are just separate for Czechia and Slovakia.
Yeah, but let's say my proposal is that if you do according to the Czech approach, your licensing and legal metadating things, you do it right, you do it fine. The proposal is not to introduce a new property terms of use or something like this. This is the proposal, just to use as is.
Okay, yes, but then I would call it rather in terms of use than a license, because license can be applied only sometimes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, and then quickly, I already mentioned it in an answer to what Mika mentioned. There's the notion of quality of service. There's no property today in DCAT-AP and DCAT that indicates a specific document of quality of service. However, there's a generic property called landing page that we could use to point all the information on it and say as this is a starting point where you can find quality of service information. So that is the proposal to say, okay, instead of splitting it out, you should provide a landing page, and we expect on that landing page references or information about the quality of service. I see from Kees that the landing page is not available for machines. What do you expect with quality of service then to be adding for machine-wise?
Okay, I would expect as many attributes as possible to be available for machines to consume, because I think the use case is that we have lots and lots of information and we want to filter through it automatically, and quality of service is something that we in the Netherlands get asked about. So if you hide it in some text, then it's not available. Maybe that's not a very big issue, but in general, I would like to have it available for machines to filter on.
Okay, I'm not aware of any vocabulary describing that level of detail at the moment, of specifying what quality of service should contain. The regulation, by the way, doesn't specify it. It specifies only you should provide quality of service information. That's the only thing what it is there.
I think it would make sense to express perhaps that there is a range of properties that you can use together to provide information about quality of service. I mentioned status and availability that somehow tells you a little bit about the quality of service you can expect. These are available on the distribution level.
Yeah.
In addition, you can provide the information in the description field of the distribution. If you want to talk about the quality of service on the dataset level, I'm not sure that makes sense necessarily.
It's API. It's only the term is used in the regulation on the level only of the API.
All right. The current specification doesn't even include the landing page on the data service, or am I wrong here?
No. So it's a generic. I took that one as a proposal as a generic.
Okay. Many data services are pointed from distributions though, so you could infer it, but that's a bit indirect. Maybe adding status and availability on the level on data service then, bring them over from distribution. But that is a huge change.
Yeah, I try to use the minimum proposal here to at least capture what is in the regulation, so give it a place.
Yes, also note that there is a FOF page for pointing to documentation. We use those landing page and documentation on the level of dataset. We could make a distinction between documentation and on the data service level as a way of providing more information.
Yeah, I know this is a lot of, let's say, on APIs and the quality of service, a lot of aspects into it that can be described in ways and so on. And often this is, let's say, written texts in the end. So anyhow, the topic is available on GitHub for more discussion to see what is available. I see that there are some aspects that are indeed, as Jacob mentions, performance, capacity, availability, but that is not necessarily the full list that could be provided. Okay, how much time, Anastasia, do we have? Still?
We don't have time.
We don't have.
We have exceeded the limit.
Okay, thanks. Okay, then I'll just skip on, say, there's a topic on contact points, have a read on it, so that's a proposal on that. There is topic 7, which already has been discussed in the generic GitHub issue, but I have reference to it and I split it up in 2 proposals. In the proposal on GitHub, there's even a 3rd one, a more detailed, but we didn't want to propose it here. Then we have a long section, and the topic that's of a challenge is how to know how to do the reporting using Sparkle. And then having the last question on that, related to that, is how to indicate that a data set is in scope of a particular member state. So that is related to the reporting, not necessarily related to the catalog management as such. So there are examples and so on. We'll share that. So what is today? So we didn't discuss 8, but okay, we prepared 8 proposals to use to apply DCAT-AP for the metadata requirements. That was our goal, to share, to open the discussion on that. We collected indeed feedback that in some aspects yeah, we have to think more and as community and to have some agreement on that and to see going forward on it. Available for open for offline discussion on GitHub. I think it would be good that we indeed reach out to our colleagues on the Inspire to see how that works, and in general, so any feedback further on welcome. Just for you to remind, on DCAT-AP, we have a number of topics of bug fixes, HTML representation, alignment with W3C, etc. And now as well the high-value datasets that will be partly included. And this is still a plan of work to create a candidate spec for the first parts, not including high-value datasets. This will be separate in it, but and having based on that, starting a public review on those aspects. And in parallel, we work on the high-value datasets. We have a new touch point at the end of March. You will get an invite and of it on that. So we have still our same topics. If you have new topics, we will list them as well there on GitHub. You will find it. And we will discuss in the same manner the topics and to find to reach out to find a consensus. And maybe there will be another webinar upcoming after that. We'll see what will be the leads. So the next webinar is at the 3rd of March. So thank you very much for listening and all your feedback.
From my side, I would like to thank everybody for attending the meeting. I would kindly ask for the members of the PSI Working Group to engage their colleagues that are working on the technical part of the Open Data Directive dealing with providing the necessary information to be harvested in data.europa.eu. I would kindly ask for the audience as well as the people that are not attended to provide feedback into GitHub, so that we in our forthcoming webinar, the 3rd of March, to be able to have a more into details discussion on and come with some decisions on the topics that were discussed here, but also because since there was the question, the comment made that people weren't prepared on what is going to be discussed, so that we can then reach to a consensus on the different topics, based also on the additional feedback that we're going to receive. So our main goal for our next webinar is to process the feedback that you have made, present the rest, reach a consensus to the topics that we for the topics that we have discussed, based also on what was discussed today, and the feedback on the GitHub. So, and present the rest of the topics, so that we have a general view on what is required from a technical point of view. So, in that sense, yes, the question to Irene was already added. So we are not providing now, making a firm decision without having a consensus on the different topics and a mature discussion on this. So from my side, thank you, Daniele. Jurka, you would like to add something?
From our side, maybe just a big thank you for launching this discussion and for giving a very well-informed feedback. We are basically representing just the regulation and the obligations expressed in the regulation, but how DCAT-AP can help with all this, that's something that we leave up to the experts from SEMIC and to the expert from member states. So we really invite you to continue this discussion and try to reach the conclusions and practical solutions that will help reusers, that will help member states, that will help member states also to report to the Commission, and that will help at the end of the day also the Commission to be able to follow how the implementing regulation is working in the member states. So many thanks to everyone for today.
Yeah, many thanks from me too.
Thank you all. Wish you a very pleasant evening.